Good morning to all my friends and family, and welcome to this episode of Jim's 5am Club. What a spectacular, awesome spring day that we have this morning. I'm down here at Darling Harbour, heading over to Piedmont for a meeting that I have, and I thought I'd take some time to do a book summary. Today's book summary is entitled Thrivers, a wonderful book for parents and for people who are looking to start a family, for those who have families, and for grandparents like me who look forward to seeing their children's families grow and flourish. So this book is written by an author named Michelle Borba, and it's about looking at the Generation Zs, the Gen Zs, and trying to understand a little bit better where their future lies and the challenges that our children as parents will face and as our grandchildren may face in the future. So this book here, the author kicks off with a thoughtful quote where she says that we are all humans who share the same fears and concerns and deserve to be treated with dignity. I think what we've learnt over the years is that each generation has its challenges. Each generation comes into the world but face similar but often different challenges to previous generations. And with each challenge comes its rewards as well. The author here says something which is really profound, really powerful, and says that today's children are more creative, ambitious, and smarter than ever before. That's a bold call. But I've got to admit, now that I've become a grandfather, I've got a 4-year-old granddaughter and a 2-year-old granddaughter. But also I see from all the other children as well, they are just so bright. They are just so bright. They're so creative. They're ambitious. They're engaging. And I guess to a certain extent, the world today is a different place to what it would have been, in the generation of our grandparents and great-grandparents. Because the huge advantage that children have these days, and that we all have these days, is we live in the digital era. And the digital era is the enabler. It's the magic glue that connects us to a wider audience and to much more information, and it's faster than ever before. When I was growing up, when our grandparents were growing up, we relied on books, we relied on family members to pass down learning so that we can grow and develop. Whereas these days, we've got all the information that we need at our fingertips, and it's instantaneous and it's free. As I say, being a grandparent, I observe my grandchildren and their ability to manipulate an iPad and look at YouTube channels and to learn from others from a very young age is just remarkable. So the digital era, the internet, YouTube, social media, it has its ugly side, but it also has a brilliant side because it provides a platform. It provides a platform to billions of people to enable them to advance if they choose. And as the author says, that children are smarter than their parents. and there's a higher chance that they also will be more anxious, more depressed, and more fearful than their parents as well, because they have a lot more to process from a very, very early age, and there's a lot more expected of them. There's no doubt that we live in a high performance world where things are changing every day. Wherever you're working, whatever you're doing, there's the pressure to perform and to perform even better on a daily basis, because things are more inclined to be measured, and because of that, you're always being compared to yourself and to others. So this is the downside. This is the challenge, I guess, that we all face, that our children and our children's children will be more anxious than what we ever were. They'll be more fearful, they'll be more depressed, and they'll be continually measured, prodded, and pushed to improve. And with this, they could possibly even miss out on living a normal childhood. And we don't even know what normal means anymore. So the author also mentioned that with all these pressures, it also means that our children's children may also be suicidal as well in their thought patterns because of all the pressures, and also the family breakdowns. When I was growing up, divorce was, you hardly heard of divorce, I've got to be honest. The first person who divorced in my family was my Uncle Angelo, and it devastated the whole family. There was a point in our lives where we said, well, wow, what has happened? We've had a divorce. Somebody got married, had children, and they're no longer married. It was a real shock to the whole family. I remember it. I remember it clearly, how much it impacted all of us in many different ways. Whereas these days, you almost expect people who are married, who have got families and children, to go their separate ways and to spend the rest of their lives hating each other. And it's also, I guess, in part to our education system, because schools are constantly monitoring and measuring, and it's a constant race. The school system is rewards people who have good memories and who follow the curriculum and study and do what they're told, which doesn't necessarily work with all children. And the school system as well is being blamed for causing the cognitive dissonance that children face, and the misfit that occurs with some people in society. Not saying all children don't benefit, but some definitely don't. But the author here says that the important thing for us to understand is that we need to build emotional intelligence in our children, and it's much more important, far more important, to have emotional intelligence than just good school grades, especially with the generations going forward. So in the past, school grades were good and assured academic success and I guess career success, but it doesn't necessarily equate to happiness. This was a point that the author keeps on reinforcing, that just because you're good at school doesn't mean that you're going to be happy in your life. It doesn't necessarily mean these days that you're going to have a good career or be able to earn a decent living. But we need our children to just be kids as well, as what the author is saying. Give them wings, let them fly, let them be themselves, and don't continually pressure them to perform because what you'll do is you'll have somebody who's externally compliant but internally rebellious, and you don't want your children in a decade or two to look back and say, geez, I hated myself and my life when I was a kid, because you want them to treasure these years and remember them as being the best years of their lives when they're growing up. But as the author said and alluded to here, that children these days are thrust into a competitive environment from as early as possible. For some kids it works. I know that I love competition. I love being with others and benchmarking and baselining my capabilities. But other kids hate being compared. I was an only child, so I wasn't always compared to a sibling or to anybody else. I was the eldest of the children, so I'm the oldest cousin in my family. So I really didn't have anybody to be compared to, so I didn't have that pressure. But what happens these days is you've got social media, and social media leaves no room for reality, and it's a constant comparison narrative where you're always seeing what other people are doing. Of course, you're only seeing the good things that they're doing, the best parts of their lives, and no way in the world you get to see the rubbish. But then again, I do see a lot of posts where people talk about their exes and just mouth off about what's not going on well in their lives, which can be a bit of a challenge as well, because it is embarrassing. So in summary, the author is saying that Gen Z, Generation Z, is more stressed because they are raised, believe it or not, I love this quote, they are raised as products. Children are raised as products these days and lack basic life skills, they lack personality, and to a certain extent the author is suggesting that they lack character. And the call to action from this author is that we need to help our children become emotionally literate. We're talking to my 4-year-old the other day about emotions, and she says, oh, I'm learning about emotions at school. And I thought, how wonderful that preschool is starting to talk to children about their emotions rather than trying to traverse the world not knowing how to deal with and how to understand what emotion is. So the author's second formal point to come out of this book is where she talks about the fact that we need a system that teaches skills based on talents and not just using the cookie cutter approach, trying to treat all children as products, because the key to happiness is self-confidence, according to a well-known author, Martin Seligman. And we need to work on people's strengths and talents, whereas the school system seems to focus on what we're not good at. Now you get your school report and all of a sudden your parents, I remember your parents focusing on all the things that you weren't good at. If your mark in maths was below average, then that's what you got hammered for. So the teachers, the author here is teaching us and telling us that it's important for children and all of us basically to work on our talents, on our strengths, so that we can I guess leverage that and become better versions of ourselves. And as I said before, the author here reminds us that the education system is based on memory skills, and not everybody has good memory skills, so there are some children who are going to be left behind given a system that has this as a key focus. The last formal point to come out of this book is where the author says that kids have an extremely innovative mindset. We mustn't underestimate children and their mindsets, because they have a wonderful mindset that needs to be, I guess, leveraged, nurtured, and helped to help them get through these early critical stages in their lives. But what happens what happens to kids' innovative mindset? The author says here is that with age, as we get a little bit older, it starts to fade. And over time, curiosity and all of these wonderful things that came naturally to us as children become a thing of the past. Because we mustn't forget that being curious, being deep learners and having fun along the way is the key to being a wonderful thinker. Not giving up on your thoughts and just treating everything as possible and finding fun in the simple things that we do, being present and not worrying too much about the future and not thinking too much about our past, because that'll make us anxious and depressed, according to the author. So now we need to reward curiosity in our children, in our workforce, because kids learn with time to unlearn. So we need to keep that learning ingredient, that learning bug going in our lives, so that we continue to be life learners and to focus on the right things rather than the wrong things, and to build on our strengths rather than worrying sick about the things that we're not good at. Because we may not be good at 10,000 things, but we could be really good at a half dozen things that make us different and can make us extremely successful. So thank you very much for joining me on this episode of Jim's 5am Club. I'm almost at the office. I'm at Piedmont Road at the moment, and I look forward to chatting to you again from a different place with a different message of empowerment, where we can go through another book summary and learn something new. Thank you to the author, Michelle Borba, who took us through and taught us a little bit more about how to be a thriver in her book Thrivers. And I look forward to living, learning and continuing to grow and to make the most, as I said, of the opportunities that we have available to us. Take care everybody, and I'll come to you again a little later on the way home with another book summary, and have a great Friday. Bye for now.